Seeing that we have a quorum, I call the meeting to order at 6:30 on the nose. And let's start with, obviously we're going to dispense with the reading of the minutes of December 13th. That's the last minutes that we had because that have not been approved. So do I have a motion?
To approve them as presented.
Okay.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we've just taken care of the minutes. Okay. The March meeting, just for the record, was canceled because there was a snowstorm. The June meeting was canceled because we did not have a quorum. So now we're picking up from December, and that's why it was December minutes. Okay, first report is CTSB, and that is Rich Frederick, Executive Director.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wait, yeah, that's right.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see everyone tonight. My reports seem to be getting longer and longer and longer all the time. I think it's because we're trying to work through all this legislation and a way forward. So I'm going to start my report tonight talking about some legislation that's against us and some legislation that's for us and possible ways forward for CTSB. So again, I'd like to thank the Cable Advisory Commission and Spectrum Management for their continued work negotiating our new contract for the 5 towns. And at the same time, we are negotiating the contract. We continue to monitor all this state and federal legislation that looks to either eliminate community media centers or create a new way of funding for community media centers. The first bill I'm going to discuss looks to eliminate cable franchise contracts completely. H.R. 3557, entitled the American Broadband Act of 2023, represents an unprecedented and dangerous usurpation of local government's authority to manage public rights of way and land use. It strips local governments of property rights and monetary compensation in favor of cable, wireless, and telecommunication providers. This federal bill also waives historic preservation and environmental rules. Yet, in return for these gifts, the bill imposes no obligations on these companies to provide broadband to unserved and underserved Americans. H. 3557 should be opposed as it, for cable, removes the ability of state and local franchise authorities to enforce franchises. It eliminates cable franchise renewals, thereby removing the ability of state and local communities to enforce franchise obligations such as build out customer service and local PAG access channels. It grants a cable operator the unilateral right to terminate or modify a franchise, but creates no obligation to remove a cable system from the rights of way. This would eliminate cable franchise fees, but allow operators to maintain other services. It would also allow operators to unilaterally eliminate provisions of contracts they deem commercially unfeasible. So that's something, you know, I meet with our mass access and all of our all the folks who represent us legally in the state and across the United States. And when we meet every month on Zoom, this is what we've been talking about, all of this legislation. And
This is federal legislation?
this is federal legislation, yes, yep. And people are signing on to it. And so next I'm going to talk about state legislation because all the states are doing things differently to save their PAG stations. Vermont's working on a poll tax, Maine's working on an excise tax. Some states are working on streaming taxes. Everyone's kind of doing it differently. Connecticut's in a whole nother world. So for us, it would be legislation in favor of community media is a Bill S34 for Massachusetts. It's called an Act to Modernize Funding for Community Media Programming. It would create a new source of funding for PAG stations in Massachusetts. Following the model of cable franchises, the bill would impose a 5% fee on digital streaming providers, which are using public rights of way in order to sell their services to Massachusetts residents. Monies would be collected at the state level twice a year and then distributed to the state general fund, municipalities, and community media centers. Distribution will be based on population and done via existing distribution methods. When people are discussing this, they're saying even if this happens, it's not going to replace all of our funding. It's going to be a small amount of funds, unless that changes. People are working to actually to change the breakdown. I think that's one of the issues holding it up. On July 13th of this year, community media stations and leaders of our advocacy agencies, such as Mass Access and Alliance for Community Media, provided testimony on Beacon Hill regarding S34. The video is available to watch on the CTSB YouTube page. David Gauthier, president of Mass Access, said it best during the testimony. Quote, if Bill S34 does not pass, we will be back in 2 years' time to discuss closures and layoffs, end quote. Many of our elected officials asked, why would we be burdening our residents with more taxes? If the streaming companies decide to pass the streaming tax onto their subscribers, then that's on them, not on the state of Massachusetts. If S34 does not pass, the cost will fall on local municipalities to keep us open. And those taxes, which will be passed on to residents, are not optional. States which have already imposed a similar fee on streaming services include Florida, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, and Washington. Individual municipalities in California, Colorado, and Illinois have also done so. While these states are taxing streaming providers, none of the money is making it to community media centers in those states. Any questions on?
Why is that?
It could be they have very few, they have very, I don't really know the reason. It could be because they have little or very few community media centers, or they're just, they're taxing them because they should be taxed, because they're using a public right-of-way on private and public lands, and they should be taxed for it.
So what's the status of the House bill?
There's no action on the calendar for any other meetings, and the last I heard, we have till February for this to pass. And I've alerted my board that we're going to spend no money moving forward, and when February gets here, if this hasn't passed, we'll continue to not spend a dime, because I think this March will be fine. We'll get a good check. Many people are still subscribing to cable. Houses are all filled. There's no empty homes. But the following year, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, as these Spectrum Xumo boxes roll out and people start turning in their cable boxes for Roku-style boxes, it's going to devastate us. So I think March of 2025, we're in real trouble. We're in real trouble unless we have legislation that saves us. And which brings me to my next subject, which is cable subscriptions. According to numbers published by the Massachusetts Department of Telecommunications and Cable, the total number of households subscribing to cable television dropped 10% from the end of 2021 to the end of 2022. This reduction represents the largest single-year loss in subscribers since data first became public. Overall, cable subscriptions in Mass have decreased from approximately 2.2 million at the apex in 2013 to 1.5 million at the end of 2022, a loss of 31% overall. Technological advances have changed how Massachusetts residents acquire their news and entertainment. Many residents are canceling cable subscriptions in favor of modern, often less expensive services offered by streaming entertainment companies like Disney, Netflix, Apple TV, Hulu, and now the Spectrum Xumo streaming box. The issue for Mass municipalities and the community media centers who serve them is that these services do not pay for their use of public rights-of-way as traditional cable always has. In an age of remote participation and lack of local media coverage, the community media center in Mass has found itself in an untenable situation of facing increased demand for services with less funding. A 2023 survey of Mass Access members reports that 71% of member organizations cite increased coverage of municipal meetings since 2020, and 59% report decreased funding in that same time frame. Now, I think CTSB is uniquely lucky. I think we live in a wealthier community with people who enjoy their cable subscriptions. Friends of ours, like PCTV in Pittsfield, have lost 25% of their funding in the past couple of years because they have a younger population that's moving to streaming boxes. So it's happening around the country. It's happening in Massachusetts. I think we're just lucky. It hasn't happened to us yet, but I'm starting to sound the alarm because I can see it happening. So what is the future of community media? I know our towns rely on community media, but I would like to remind our elected leaders of our peril. Our town select boards should be aware that a new contract, which we're currently negotiating, does not guarantee funding for the length of the contract. It only guarantees 5% of the dwindling cable subscriptions. It's my personal worry that people are going to say, oh, congratulations, you got a 10-year contract. Like we have you for 10 more years. It's just not true. We're only as good as the amount of cable subscribers we have. This fall, Spectrum will begin to make their new streaming box named Xumo available at Walmart. This streaming box offers traditional cable channels in a new box at a lower cost. I believe that once the initial Xumo sales decline, Spectrum may make the Xumo box free to speed up the transition to streaming TV, of which the community media centers will not receive a percentage of. I have real concerns CTSB could face extreme funding losses in early 2025. We continue to monitor state and federal bills and continue to reach out to elected officials, reminding them to support legislation protecting community media. The state of Massachusetts has until February of 2024 to pass legislation in support of community media. If this bill fails, as it has in the past year, I defer back to David Gauthier's testimony. Quote, if Bill S-34 does not pass, we will be back in 2 years' time to discuss closures and layoffs. And then I'm going to talk about a couple new things at CTSB, but does anyone have any questions about that part?
The 10% that you referenced from the end of 2021 to the end of 2022, I think is exaggerated. I think it's less than that. I think for the five-town group, we're at somewhere around 3.5%, and I think Spectrum's annual report said something like 4.5%, I think. Is that what you remember?
Yeah, I think the 31% is the loss between 2013 and 2022. It's the loss over that.
That seems high, but if it's true, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, no, this is from Mass DOT.
Huh.
I would imagine that areas that have universities do not have high cable TV subscriptions. I think it depends on the demographics of the area that you're in, and we're in an older area, a much older area.
No, it's just shocking, and it just begs the question: what are the next steps to fix it? You know.
Well, I think it's going to be legislation.
Yeah.
I do think it's going to be legislation. I think the idea of, some people have said, well, hey, what about fundraising and underwriting? We're not in the business of fundraising and underwriting, and it's just not a consistent way forward. Every year would be different. Every year would be a challenge. Everyone has agreed that that's not a consistent way forward for PEG stations who are in the business of broadcasting television. So.
We used to do fundraising.
Yep. I've offered my board, and our board has been hesitant, but I continue to remind them that other stations are doing it, and I know our friends at PCTV make a considerable amount of underwriting support on the radio and TV side.
I think the market that we know it as now, and the funding mechanism, and the community television as we know now, will not continue. It's going to go, the dislocations that's gone through in every other industry. So I would hope that your board would be looking at really creative ways and seeing what's going on with because I think if everybody thinks that somehow this money is going to come in and that we are going to be looking at the same model for community television, I'd like to see it as community information. It won't be. I'd be shocked. Let me put it that way.
And I agree. And I know the municipal, our local towns that we serve, would need to provide us with $500,000 a year to keep the building open and to keep 4 employees operating. And that's it's an incredible amount of money that our municipalities cannot afford.
What we need to do is not, and this is a message for your board, is not to thumb their noses at possible sources of revenue, whatever size they may be, and say, no, it's not in our image kind of thing. We're not going to worry about images anymore. We're going to worry about money, and that they should not be being negative about anything and try everything.
We continue to move forward. We have lots of plans in our future, and you know, I've got some big ideas for next year that I'm not ready to discuss yet. But yeah, we're not giving up, and we're hopeful. Some people are more hopeful than me. Some people are less. You know, some people think we've come this far, and there's no way we're turning back now. We're not going to stop here, but we'll see.
Okay.
I think overall, there's been a reduction in public access stations just since 1980. 1980, there was almost 3,000 public access stations. Last year, they did, the number was dropped down to a little over half, about 1,600. So if that trend's continued, I'm sure it's probably around 1,500 or less now. So, you know, there's whether it's a lack of interest, whether it's just improper management. I mean, it was a big thing when it first started, as it was here. And I think there has to be a concerted effort to be able to provide something that people can't get elsewhere, or make it easier for people to access something that they can't get elsewhere.
Right.
So there was a letter that came out from Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll today I saw it today. It went to every town manager, every town administrator in all 351 communities in Massachusetts. And it requests by, I think it was September 20th, that they are searching for ideas of how they can help communities with just the standard, you know, money in Chapter 90, making more grants available. So maybe every one of us needs to go talk to our town administrator or manager and have them pull out that letter and suggest to them that they, in writing their answer or thing to her, and she's also going to be doing some listening sessions in the fall, figure out a way to retain the PEG community access channels. Mm-hmm. Because what's happened is a complete consolidation of media, and this is just another aspect of that. But the Lieutenant Governor is actually looking for things that they can consider doing. So given your presentation, we should all have the assignment to go talk to our town manager or administrator and have these comments about supporting PEG access, whatever form it takes, because I do think it's going to be different.
Okay, I do plan on visiting all the town select boards this fall and early winter. I'm already scheduled to speak in Stockbridge in October, and the reason I'm doing it is it's not in the, it's not being reported in the mass media. Just nobody's aware. So, actually, when I brought up the Zumo boxes the other day on a national Zoom call, people were kind of taken aback. They weren't even aware of that.
Well, we have a wonderful local reporter in Heather Bello who covers a lot of the southern areas. I don't know who's got Great Barrington. I don't know her Clarence Fanto's territory. Stotts are finished, but they are both extremely good reporters, and it is possible that a call to them would get a story out of this. Because it's not just us. It's Pittsfield, it's Dalton, it's everybody. It goes right up. It's a Berkshire County story.
Right. Yeah, I speak to the Edge management from time to time, and I think it's due. Yeah.
I think you've made some strong steps already, to modernize the TV station, in terms of streaming video. You have a strong website, you stream content, video, and I think it's just long term, it's just the nature of the technology changing. And the legislation just hasn't caught up with the funding mechanism for it.
Yeah. Yesterday's PEG station, we're not that PEG station that you saw 5 or 10 years ago. We stream.
Absolutely.
We have a modern website. We have classes by people that teach in Italy. We do photography. We do smartphone recording. We stream to our website. We have an app. We've got brand-new logos and graphics, and we're on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, and monitor our numbers, and, you know, we've had one of our new shows, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but we've had 50 local artists in our studio in the past 3 months. So, I mean, our calendar is full. We are super busy. We do more town meetings than we've ever done. You know, we're only required to do select board meetings, but we accept all meetings. And for example, for the town of Stockbridge, that means the Stockbridge Bowl, the land conservation, you know, that means not just one meeting, that's like 20 meetings a month or more. So I know in my last report, I said we used to cover 50-something meetings per year. Now it's 250 meetings per year. And we're managing Zoom accounts, and people are going there in person, such as Rob is doing tonight. So we're doing it all. We're doing hybrid, full Zoom, and you know, in-person recording and live if requested. So we can do anything a network TV station can do. We stream events live from the community all the time. So yeah, we're fully modern, up to date, and so I'll leave you tonight with my CTSB report. I wish this could be longer, but I spent so much time talking about legislation. CTSB continues to advertise various forms. We use the Berkshire Edge. There's an ad on there that's clickable. We use a small little newsletter out of Housatonic, Eileen Mooney's The Newsletter. And in here we have I mean, there's a lot of information in here. If anyone, Eileen, I know, has 250 paper subscribers and probably as many digital subscribers. But you know, we use things like this to reach our community. We have a full page ad in there with a QR code. You click on photograph this with your phone, takes you right to the video. And then we have, each month we put out a list of, this is new programming just for the month. This is just 30-something shows for 4 weeks, and we do this consistently every month. And this is only our public channel. This isn't government or education. This is one channel for 4 weeks. We pump out an incredible amount of programming, and it's great. It's great programs. Our current membership is 107 individuals, 14 organizations. I know the Cable Advisory Commission probably doesn't care about social media stats because that's the other side of cable, but we have 680 followers on Facebook. We have 419 on Instagram. I'd like to thank CTSB member Thad Kubis, who just finished up 8 weeks of classes at CTSB on how to record with a smartphone. And many of Thad's students are new members at CTSB. And I shared with you the list of new programming that goes out every month. You should, if you subscribe to CTSB, you should get an email every month with all of our latest content. And then I just left a list of each show that we've done in the past 4 weeks. This was for July. And a lot of these shows are done by our interns. During the summer, we hosted middle school students were bussed in from Farmington River, and September till spring, we host 2 times a week students from Berkshire CIP, which is Berkshire College Internship Program, and those are students with high-functioning ADHD and autism, and they line up at our front door. They love coming to CTSB. It's a great fit for them. And we were given an award last year for outstanding community partnership for our work with the students, and our work continues with those students 2 days per week. So lots of good things are happening, and let's keep our fingers crossed that
we can continue to do it.
Legislation somehow saves us.
Do you have anyone on your board that is good at grant writing, or that could solicit sponsors, especially for closed captioning? There's a couple items that we've talked about over the course of negotiations that would be a good fit for some organizations.
I think we have one person on our board that has been a grant writer in the past. And it's funny you mentioned it because I think this was talked about at our last meeting or maybe a couple meetings ago about applying for some grants that are out there. So that is on our radar. I know Mary spoke to Steve Radin about it, and I'll revisit that.
Yeah, the closed captioning, the amounts,
The The closed captioning, again, I brought it up at the national conference the other day with the Alliance for Community Media.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we were offered that they would do it for us. They wouldn't strip it. They would let the signal to flow through.
Right.
And I said, but we're going to pass because it's $2,000 a month to pay for the people
Right.
to decode it. And the president of Alliance for Community Media said that's illegal. They cannot. It's a free service for people with disabilities. We should not be charged for it, and we should be given it. And there's current litigation going on right now between Alliance for Community Media, Spectrum, and another community TV station in the Berkshires. I'm not going to say who it is, but they're actually like ready to go to court or something like that. So
Okay.
he said, no, there should be no financial, nothing financial involved with closed captioning at all,
And
period.
the other little item is a programming schedule, that you could put up not only for, cable TV, but also for your online schedule.
Yeah, unless you're to kind of do it manually, the best way we have is our tightrope internal broadcast system will say like what's coming up next or what's coming up for the next 3 or 4 hours. If you look on cable itself, it'll just say like, public access.
Yeah.
And I believe that's not possible because it's the same signal for everyone in Berkshires, I believe. So it can't really say CTSB because then people in Pittsfield would see the same thing.
Yeah.
So creating a schedule is, unless we were to do it manually, and it changes every day. Our schedule isn't the same every day. Every day it's completely different.
So you've outlined succinctly where you are right now. You've also outlined what you see as a future vision, the funding, no more $500,000 from, community TV.
Right.
That you need to create a bridge to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that part of that is going to have to include sponsorships and grant writing.
Right.
And then eventually local funding somehow.
Right.
In lieu of cable TV funding.
Right.
Yeah.
But who's going to, if as cable transitions to streaming and our channels are gone, there are no more channels. It's like a Hulu, right? There's boxes of programming, NBC, ABC. How are you going to underwrite if we don't have a channel anymore? We would have a website. That's all we would have. That would be our connection to the community. So how can you underwrite when you don't have a broadcast channel?
That's a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also encourage the board not to expect that its own members should be the ones who are writing grants. You can hire grant writers. There's reputations that go with grant writers. If they're good, they're going to earn their keep quite nicely. But it's a skill to write a grant and to know how to read the grants, find them, read them, and know which ones are going to be appropriate or not. And a lot of time and money can be wasted on the part of a good-meaning individual who's trying to do this if they really don't have the skill set. So I would encourage the board not to necessarily feel that it itself needs to do that task, but I would hope that they would start to, as several people have mentioned, look at outside sources for funding.
All right, yeah, and we briefly discussed that. I could see in 3 or 4 years, if we're still here, one of our 4 positions would be community outreach, grant writing, underwriting.
Rich, I think you're missing, I'm hearing that you might be missing the message. I think what we're hearing from you, at least me, is we are in dire situation. We might be gone by next year, or definitely by 25. And so what I think I'm hearing the CAC suggest is that you start looking now. You have shown us extensive lists of programming that is all on the public channel. You have shown us that you are streaming. That's not in the cable TV contract. You are already reaching people through the innovative techniques that are basically eating your lunch. So if there is a way to bring people on board to support that, I don't know, but I would be encouraging you again to have your board start thinking about raising money, even if it's not comfortable, because I don't think you have 3 years to wait.
Right. No, I agree. And if we receive a penny less in funding in March of 2025, our staff is going to go from 4 to 3. And then things are going to get really difficult.
So there's, you can file the PEG, the public education government. The towns you're providing a service to the towns right now. You're videotaping or you're taping and you're streaming the meetings. That has value. If there's no funding coming from cable TV, I would think that they would recognize the value and fund that. The programs that you do for schools have value to the school systems. So it would behoove you, I think, to talk to the superintendent of schools and say, hey, we provide this valuable service to you. We don't have funding anymore. We're going to have to get funding through the schools for that, and just keep expanding that.
They're
I don't think that's gonna work.
I understand.
They themselves are looking for money. We're all looking for money.
Everybody's looking.
And that's why I'm going to go on a tour of town select boards this
Yes, you
fall,
should.
early winter, to let them know this is happening. But still, $500,000 to keep us going is a lot of money. And when you raise people's taxes, what starts to happen.
Yeah. You should talk to the select boards and point out your issues, but also ask them for their help in terms of personnel.
There's
To-
no extra personnel in most town halls these days. In fact, we are looking for people.
Yeah.
We are,
Well, I'm talking about people who specialize, like grant writers and things like that.
Well, you can contact other organizations.
For them to give their expertise to you, to teach you how to do that.
there are classes that BRPC, Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, has been putting on right now on how to write grants. And there's one that's going to be, I actually think it's tomorrow, that MMA is doing. So there's grant writing classes out there.
Okay.
There's that, plus you have a close association with Shakespeare and Company. You do
Right.
a lot of grant writing.
Yeah.
Find out who the key person is there and ask for their help if they can offer you any suggestions.
Sure, yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, great, thanks.
Anita?
Which the Fair Share Amendment that passed last year, the millionaire's tax, the 1%, that money is designated for education and transportation. I wonder if there's some way to get in on that education money, to have some of that set aside to support the
Possibly, yeah. I mean, people throw out ideas all the time on possible sources, but again, me and my 3 staff members aren't in the business of grant. We're getting shows on the air. I think we'd have to hire somebody to do all this work and investigating. And our alliance members are just, they're the ones that are saying this. They're like, grant writing and fundraising it's not going to be a way forward for you. It's going to be too inconsistent. One year you're going to have the money, next year you're not. They said it's not the business you're in.
It's only a stopgap.
And now you're competing with nonprofits that help families and children and feed people. And trust me, TV is going to come last. It's going to come last.
Yeah, grant writers will work off of commission as well. So you don't have to essentially pay them up front. You can pay them a piece of whatever they raise. But I agree with you. People don't like taxes, but they don't like a cut of services either. So if town meetings were no longer televised, I think that would hurt as well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's only when we're gone that the uproar would begin, I believe.
Yeah.
Not that we're asking them, the towns or other entities to provide a profit for you, just to cover their own costs.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, it doesn't hurt to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get an answer.
But I think the first question is going to be, so what have you done to raise money besides coming to the towns? I'm just giving that as my position as a select board member.
Okay.
But, you get requests all the time, and the first request is, what have you done to raise money for your nonprofit? And there then begins, because we just put out a request for grants from nonprofits to award some ARPA money, and I think there were 25 grant requests that came in. The maximum request was $25,000, and I think all but one had $25,000. So, and part of our application is, do you do fundraising? what's your mission? What's the benefit to the town? So just coming to the town and asking for money is a ask that requires a lot of consideration. Because as you know, as someone in previously in advertising and in polling, you don't want a no. Because once you get a no, it's really hard to overcome that no.
That's right.
You want a yes or a maybe at the least. So I don't see myself going to towns.
Or at least go in asking for a matching grant, raise 50%, ask for 50%.
Well, look, we've got to explore all the avenues. That's all what it amounts to. And I'm going to use, a phrase that has been around for a long time. We will leave no stone unturned.
Right.
Okay?
And it's not my intention to ask for any money at the select boards. I just want everyone to be aware of the situation that we're in. And I do know that the town select boards by like July of next year will be working through budgets for fiscal year, 2025.
They'll start in January.
They'll start in January.
So
They start in
hear my
January.
message now, in case they choose to set some money aside.
That's exactly right. You need to start getting to them.
Community impact funding, Renee?
What?
Community impact funding, do you have that in Sheffield?
No,
Grants.
we don't have, are you talking CPA?
Yes.
CPA is only used for recreational, housing, and historic preservation.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't deal with this.
Do we have any more questions?
Just one real quick question, I want to backpedal a little bit. Your smartphone course that you had for movie production,
Right.
you said it was an 8-week course. How many hours a week?
4 weeks for smartphones and 4 weeks for SLR cameras.
Right, but how many
So
hours per
it's a 9 to noon, once a week for 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's, yeah. All right.
Yep, so, I will, one of my items for the next board meeting will be to talk about fundraising or possibly hiring a human to handle that in the future. I will bring that to the board. I do think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rich.
for all your great work.
Sure,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah. Follow up on that. Anita, you have a report for us, correct?
Well, Rich covered a lot of that.
I know, but let's hear the rest of
I
it.
mean, do you want me there?
Yeah.
Is that, okay. I'm not totally sure. Sorry.
We can bring the mic to you if you'd like.
I'm stiff when I get up. Okay, so it was my understanding that you wanted me to find out what was happening with the legislation. So it was House Bill 74 and Senate Bill 34, which are the same, the Act to Modernize Funding for Community Media Programming. And that's legislation to establish a comprehensive statewide policy concerning streaming entertainment services and the recovery of municipal costs for the management and maintenance of digital infrastructure. So I contacted our state senator, Paul Mark, back in February. He found the new Senate bill number, which is 34, because last year there was similar legislation that didn't pass. So he found it, he signed on as co-sponsor for the bill. And his latest communication with me last week said he'll do what he can on the Senate side to promote the bill, and he'll contact the Senate Chair, Mike Moore. Mike Moore and Tricia Farley-Bouvier are the co-chairs of this joint committee on advanced information technology, the internet and cybersecurity for information. And they held that public hearing that you can watch on CTSB. I actually went on it live. It was very interesting. It touched on all the technology bills, but we were interested in this one in particular. I did contact Representative Smitty Pignatelli, who also signed on to the House bill. And he was the one who told me to contact Tricia Farley Bouvier. She's the rep from Pittsfield, and that she's the co-chair. She's the House chair of this joint committee. The Senate chair is Michael Moore. And so Tricia put me in touch with Chris Smith, who's the research director for the Joint Committee on Advanced Information Technology, the Internet, and Cybersecurity. Chris got me on that meeting, gave me the information for the July 13th hearing, and he's supposed to keep me updated. And he, like you said, they have until February to pass the bill. And I've asked everyone, what can we do? I mean, the best thing that we can do is get people to contact their state senators, state representatives, and in particular, this committee. So, Tricia.
Anita, did he say why, or she say why, February?
Well, that's the last date, I guess, for the legislation to be passed
Or it dies.
for this legislative year. Committee, Crystal, committee looks forward to hearing. After the hearing, the committee will continue hearing from stakeholders and will have until February to make decisions on sending bills further.
Oh, okay.
So they can
Yeah,
send.
I was going to say
further
February
along.
seems like they're getting very,
Right. So I guess what we need to do is.
so they have to report it out of committee
Right.
by February, so it can go to the full, okay, fine. That makes sense.
I guess thank you for.
No, I just wasn't sure what was going on.
So I guess that's what we need to push for.
Does it start in the House or the Senate? How does the legislation get slated for a vote?
Well, it's a joint committee. They're both really working on the same bill.
But it would have to go, someone, whoever it is, I don't know if it's the speaker's position, but the speaker would call for a vote on this particular bit of legislation, correct?
Has to get out of committee first.
Has to get out of committee first.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of stuff gets buried in committees and it just
Yeah.
never goes
Right.
anywhere.
Huh.
It
I-
previously had not gotten out of committee.
Yeah.
We need to push it to get to the full legislature for a vote.
So
I
Trish is the one to contact, I think, huh?
Well, Tricia, because, we know her, she's in
Yeah.
Pittsfield. She's active on the Berkshire Gates.
Yeah.
She's here, she's local, and she's the House chair. I'm not familiar with the Senate chair, Mike Moore, but Paul Mark said he would be in touch with him, and I guess those are the two people that would, contact to try and get them
Yeah.
to get this bill in front of the whole
Paul Mark is a
legislature.
wonderful senator. We are
Yes.
really fortunate to have him. But there's nothing wrong with looking up on the website all of the committee, all of the joint, if this is a joint committee, all of the joint committee members. And then going into the Senate side and the House side, pulling their emails and sending it to Paul and sending it to Tricia and CC everybody on the committee.
Yeah.
I've done that multiple times, and then they all see it.
We need to see some spots on CTSB that ask people who are watching it to contact their elected officials. And I'd like you to work with Rich to provide him with all the information as to actually how to contact them, like phone numbers or email addresses and stuff, and what kind of message to put in there. You got the message, you got the numbers. Please, and that I think will be helpful because we can get the community that does watch CTSB to respond and support it and say, hey, do it or lose it.
I mean, at the hearing, there was testimony from different of these community media stations, and the things that they're doing are just amazing. So it's not, just here. But I think we have a slight advantage because Tricia's local, so we do know her. But I guess we just need to get people to.
We need community support.
Right. So,
Yeah, if you have an address and a phone number where people can, let their voices be heard, we can put it on our broadcast.
Yeah.
Does David Gunther have a kind of a pre-composed letter that you can send to your,
Yeah, that's on their website.
that'd be helpful for some people.
Yeah, thank you.
The other thing is do a script. You know, if you're going to call, which you can do, because there's always somebody who'll take a voicemail, if you call, this is all you have to say. I just want to let you know, I am supporting this bill. Community television is important to me. Please also support it. That's it. Doesn't have to be this long. It just has to be short and sweet, because
Yeah,
they sit there and they
And they
register
should give name,
what comes in.
name, address, and where they can be contacted as well.
Yeah.
she had also put me in touch with Christopher Smith, who's the research director for the Joint Committee on Advanced Information Technology, the Internet and Cybersecurity. So he was very helpful and informative. So yeah, I can give you the names. I found it really interesting what you said about Kim Driscoll putting out that letter, and she's very receptive. She was just started it last
The whole
week.
administration is, yeah.
And yeah, we want to get it to the governor's desk this year. It's important. We need to get some pressure on them. And I think it's something that should be supported.
We should really, on CTSB, and say, if you want to keep your CTSB, you have to tell people that. You have to write to them, you have to call them, you have to follow up on it with them, and see that the legislation gets passed.
One problem with the CTSB stations on Comcast, they're 1301, 2, and 3. So people that have basic cable don't get them. Basic cable doesn't go beyond channel 50.
Yes, it does, but you have to input that channel manually.
So they
It
can't.
doesn't scroll up there, but if they press in 1301 or 1302 or 1303, it will go there. I tested that this week at somebody's
So that
house.
takes care of that issue in
But
the
it
contract.
doesn't scroll up there.
Okay.
It doesn't work on the apps, though. It doesn't work on.
No,
Yeah.
you're right about that.
Yeah.
No, the government, right now, the government channel is the only thing that shows up on the streaming apps, whether you're on a laptop or if you have a smart TV. At least on mine, anyway. I'm not, I just assumed it
Is
was
this
that way for
Spectrum's
all of
app?
them. This is Spectrum, this is Spectrum's, yeah.
Because you had said that.
Yeah, I did. I addressed this a few meetings ago, and
But I thought that because it showed up on the app that it was there, but it's not.
Government
Right.
is.
The government.
Government one is 1303.
I couldn't
That's it.
access it. I always get it actually from the ctsbtv.org. I realize now because on Spectrum it's standard definition, it's grainy.
Yes,
the
yes, it
audio
is.
is difficult to understand, and it's really nice on CTSB.
Yeah.
When we have our own app, like, it's kind of hard to promote that. It's cable.
Cable
It's
cast.
part of our internal network. And you can actually watch every PEG station in the state or the country on that. But, and we do advertise it, but it's not as easy as,
No.
So you were saying, I just want to clarify, when you go on Spectrum's streaming app for cable TV,
Right.
you only get one channel. Is that what I heard? Or do you get the three
I
channels?
get one of the three. I get 1303.
1303, you don't get the other two?
So it goes, I actually took a picture of it before I left home.
Huh, do you know that, John? Should they get all of them?
But it was also Madison, Wisconsin Select Board meeting.
Well, the programming was, I don't know who does the programming
It
on the
wasn't
channel.
local.
No, a lot of stuff isn't local on channels, whether it's public access or government or educational.
Right.
But yeah, I go right from 1279 BBC News to 1303 government access, and then it jumps from there right to 1390, the community calendar.
Right.
And that's on, and I checked everything, I checked the 2014 smart TV, a 2023 smart TV, and my PC. It was all the same.
So this is streaming.
Right, this is without a cable box.
Okay, so this has
Exactly.
nothing to do with cable TV.
It is cable TV.
I mean,
It is.
but is the streaming provided under the cable TV?
Well, yes.
No.
It's their app.
I thought the streaming was a different technology.
No one has ever been in touch with us about moving to your app or the Zumo box or anything like that. So as far as I'm aware, we're not on any of it.
How do we get G though, and not P?
Right. That was my question.
And all of our programming is local. I'm not aware of any programming that's not local. So if you see something that's not out of the 5 towns, it's not us.
Yeah.
We don't cover
But I
anything.
didn't think it was you.
We don't play anything.
Have you watched 1303? And is it Rich's programming or not?
In the past, I have seen.
It depends
select
on
board
where you're
meetings
watching
and
it
stuff
from.
On there.
It depends
So
on,
it is CTSP.
Do you bring in programming from other sources on the government channel?
Pittsfield, some cooking shows in the morning, but nothing government, nothing education, all local. Strictly the 5 towns and the 4 school districts.
let's just, for a moment, let's clarify stuff here. The different geography has its own local community television, and that local television is plugged in to the channels 1301, 2, and 3 locally. Ours, for our 5 towns, are CTSB. Pittsfield is PCTV, et cetera, and that's all through the different towns, systems. And some of the towns only have 1 channel, because that's all they produce. So, I mean, it's different. It's each geography,
Shouldn't matter.
each head end, actually, is that's because that's where it gets plugged in. Each head end has its own designations.
So if we have a question about that, John,
Based on
how do we get that answered? Is it through you, or do we contact the 1-800 number, or?
Well, I'll talk to Rich about it, because I don't understand why we get G and we don't have P and E.
Right.
Right.
The programming comes from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow we're getting G but not P and E.
Right, now, my question was, this is going back probably a year now, cable box worked. My assumption at the time when I dropped the cable boxes and just went to the smart TV app and you know, all the other streaming access, was it was gonna be the same. It's not. So I don't know who controls that.
Right, you're correct, because I tried it from streaming on the app, the Spectrum app on Smart TV, on my Apple TV. And only 1303, and it was Madison, Wisconsin. But I thought I usually watched on here. I have the Spectrum app here, which is the guide. There's no internet connection, but and it shows 1301, 1302, 1303. But when I tried them, they don't work on here. And I realized that I was going to you, to ctsptv.org, in order to get them. So
So have you ever seen 1303 on your apps or phones or iPads? Besides Madison, Wisconsin?
Well,
CST?
Well, that was the programming that was on tonight. And in fact, they were actually talking about funding for access television. So it was a related topic imported from somewhere. And you mentioned Pittsfield. What is PCT doing
CTV.
for programming through you?
No, they have
their own.
cover the city of Pittsfield and Pittsfield school districts and.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about South County here. I'm talking about our 5 towns.
Is it possible that this technological problem could be solved outside of this committee meeting?
Yeah.
I think it's been identified.
John, could you look into that? Because that's problematic.
Because it's 2 different apps. I didn't realize that. There's the app that's on the iPad and you can usually watch. But then there's the one that's on, like Apple TV or whatever you have, Roku.
But it should be the same.
It should be, but it's not.
It's exactly,
So Apple TV is the must.
pardon me?
Apple TV is nice.
No, okay.
No, but you can put the Spectrum TV on there, because we were watching it through that.
Okay.
Spectrum,
I can talk about it.
Right.
Yeah,
Spectrum TV is obligated to carry CTSB on cable TV. They're not obligated to carry CTSB on streaming anything, and that's just a fact.
But they purport that
That's
the app
the issue.
is the same as,
Right.
it offers all the channels. You can go anywhere and watch all the things that you normally watch. So it's their own advertising that commits them to providing the same service that they do through a cable box, in my opinion.
We'll have to look at that advertising.
yes, we have
Yeah.
to.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I haven't seen it in a while, but
All right.
that's the way it used to be.
Thank you, Anita.
Nice job.
Yeah,
Thank you. I will give you the addresses, contact information.
okay. Let's see. Spectrum report.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see everybody. Thank you for all your work. Some of you have been involved in negotiations, as Rich said, they're moving along, and I always like to hear Rich's report, all the good things that CTSB is doing is wonderful. I'm kind of short and sweet tonight. I think it's been working well with our communication on a regular basis, just to let me know if there are any big issues that are unique and I need to be involved in. So just keep that going. And I put an article in here. I was going to actually present it at the last meeting, but it's how we're doing proactive maintenance throughout our network now. Before it was at the node level, but because of technology, we can get closer and closer, and we can monitor the boxes with telemetry outside the home, inside the home, and we can kind of diagnostically find out where there are issues before our customers even realize it, and we're more proactive than we've ever been by reaching out to customers with their preferred method to correct issues. So the employees are trained on more modern technology, which is good for our workforce. The customers are happy because we discover issues before they even realize it, and it decreases the customer service calls we get, obviously, less customers calling with issues. And we also had if anybody saw it on the news, the whole Disney ESPN thing, thankfully was settled yesterday before Monday Night Football, so.
Yeah, but it went black right at the beginning of the finals in tennis.
Tennis, yes, US Open tennis.
Tennis people.
In a football game, some Florida fans or Utah fans out there.
So, John, what was that about? I mean, Spectrum and Disney, I mean, I've read the stuff in the papers and in some of the industry, and everybody was like this. So, other than maybe the magic of Aaron Rodgers, who went out in the first play, what ended up making this come
It's just
together and be agreed?
Compromise.
It's just about money, and as Rich
It wants a
outlined,
bigger piece of
it's
the
a
pie.
changing world, and people are sick and tired of how much the rates keep increasing. Sports, we pay Disney $2.2 billion a
I saw
year
that.
just for ESPN. And maybe it includes Disney too, but all their channels, they have a ton of channels. And a lot of people don't watch them. We said that about 25% of our customers watch ESPN. So it's not such a high demand. They're going direct to consumer. They want to have their own app and streaming and sell. And we're like, well, we're paying you $2.2 billion, and our customer, expects good service, because they're moving all the goods. The streamers are moving. We don't own any content, but the streamers are moving all the good content. Like Disney, all the Disney channels are getting watered down, and they're putting everything on Disney Plus
Everything's
to
plus.
get more revenue, and ESPN Plus and whatnot. And we're like, no, the world's changing. Our customers should have access to that. If we're paying you $2.2 billion, we want our customers to have access to that streaming content too, because your linear channels, the old cable channels, are getting watered down because they want people to go.
So did you get that in the agreement?
It was a compromise. We're getting a wholesale rate, but our customers are going to be able to access the streaming, yes.
Thank you.
We told, publicly, our CEO said we might walk away from ESPN and Disney. Because the
I just
profit
wanted to know
margin
what
is
had
so
changed.
thin
Yeah.
on video. He threatened the day after they shut it, the morning after they shut us off. Yeah, they had he had an investor conference with investors and said, the whole industry is changing, and we were the ones that finally stood up. Comcast, I don't want to speak for Comcast. Comcast is the largest video provider. We're second largest. We have 15 million customers. And we were going to walk away from all the Disney and ESPN. Our customers don't want to pay for it, we don't think. And they can go and get ESPN Plus and pay for the streaming or whatever if they want to. Disney owns Hulu.
Yeah.
They co-own it with Comcast, so it's worth like $27 billion. And Disney has to buy out Comcast. It was supposed to be next year, but they've moved it up to this year. I just read an article about it, but yeah, the whole world is changing.
So-
We said enough is enough, and it's gonna impact, I didn't think through this, but like the NBA, all the pro sports, they get most of their revenue from ESPN and TNT and whoever else wants to provide it. It's from the Fox, it's from the TV contracts. The NFL, they get billions of dollars.
Do you have any ideas of how this is going to impact the average bill here in, who has sports? 'Cause
I have
it's
no
pretty well
idea.
bundled
But
in
we
there.
also get rid of a lot of Disney channels that people, I've never even heard of Baby Disney or something, what Disney, it's geared for kids 3 and under. I didn't know such a channel existed.
Yeah.
But we're getting rid of a bunch of channels.
But I was going to say,
Bunch of channels.
you have running duplicates of the channels, the same programming on 2 and 3 channels,
Yeah.
and that's ridiculous.
So that'll all come out in the wash. I mean, a lot of details, haven't been worked out, I don't think yet, but, I mean, it's other programmers too. So Disney owns ABC, so that's the broadcast fees that we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
And they keep going up too. Comcast owns NBC, so we're gonna have to renew contracts with them. And I think I can't speak for our CEO, but I think we're gonna take the same stance with other programmers that offer streaming.
As the field gets watered down more and more, people aren't going to mainstream channels like ABC, NBC, CBS. They're going to YouTube and watching snippets of this or watching commentaries and, they're just, it's changing. The horizon's changing. Even cable companies are worried about where it's gonna be in 10 years.
It's a world in transition is what we're living
Yeah,
in right
It
now.
is.
So in a 10-year contract, is there enough flexibility? Are there packages that are going to be available so that if people do want to?
Well, that's the big thing we asked for, is flexibility, so we could offer packages. A lot of I just said it, 25% of our customers want ESPN, so we wanted the flexibility to offer packages that didn't include Disney, and we're going to be able to do that
All right.
Because Metro taught people to get Fubu.
as an option. Yeah, I mean, if people wanted to get sports programming, that's one way to do it. Disney said get Hulu because they own Hulu.
Anita, we, in our contract, we cannot even discuss programming. Programming is not our bailiwick.
Yeah, it's always been.
But Charter can make any program they want. They can,
Right.
they're obligated by our license agreement to must carry TV stations, and then pay.
The broadcasters.
That's it. You can make any kind of package you want,
Well, it depends on the programming.
whether you make money on it or not.
All I
That's the
can
thing.
say,
Well, that's what we wanted to do, was more freedom to offer what our customers really want. And a lot of customers don't want to watch ESPN, so why should they have to pay for it? Like, cable subscribers for decades have supported ESPN, even though if they don't watch a single show.
John,
That's how it's been.
all I will say is this. You've seen my bill because we needed that to look at stuff. I just got a rate increase. My bill is now just shy of $300 a month, which is absolutely,
Now, is that for the cable, or are you bundled?
it's bundled.
So we're only talking about cable, that's the only thing we
All
have
right, so
responsibility
that's
for.
where the increase was, in the cable.
I just want to make
The
it clear that
programming
it's not
costs keep
300 for just
increasing.
the cable.
That's right, that's where the increase came from.
And
Now,
we're trying to control that more and more. So it was well, I don't want to give you my personal.
Okay, well, since we're going to move on now.
Yep.
Since we don't have any public here, we're not going to do any public Q&A.
Okay.
And a license renewal update, actually.
Oh, just a second, were you through with your report, John?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
thank you.
But we have, you're not finished yet.
Okay,
Because we have, you're going to be on new business.
Can I compliment John? I did get one of those phone calls where they told me I was having a problem with my cable that we weren't aware of, but we did keep crashing, right? And they replaced the router. And then you guys sent out 2 people who went through everything. This was in January, and it's been great.
good, that's good to hear.
It was all wiring and stuff. So, because I thought it was weird, but they called me and said, you have a problem. You know?
Just
Good to hear.
a question on the technical side now, is this in response to cable boxes or the modems?
I'm sorry?
In other words, you're responding, your equipment,
Telemetry diagnostics.
telemetry, your diagnostics, so is geared to work with feedback from the cable boxes?
I think
and
both.
or the
I think
modems?
both, but I don't know for sure.
Oh, it'd be nice to know. Just curious, since I don't have a cable box.
Yeah.
So I'm
Exactly.
wondering if you're getting telemetry and metrics from
Do you have,
modems.
do you lease the router from us? Or do you own your own? Some people opt to
Well,
buy their own.
Not the modem, the modem is from,
From us,
from you. Yeah.
so we can monitor our own equipment.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, new subject.
Okay.
In the town of Lee, there is a road, a street, that is called Chanterwood. It's on your Strand map. There are at least 24, perhaps more, homeowners there who have been trying to get cable there, your cable, and have been denied
Mine.
by John, what's his name?
Leon?
Yes, John Leone. John Leone was out and he says, well, we can't do this. But your contract says you
100%.
must. Your contract with the 5 towns, with the town of Lee, which is one of our towns.
Well, it might be a density issue.
Pardon me?
It might be a
There's
density.
ways to overcome
I thought
density.
that was overcome.
Has
Here's-
nothing to do with it.
It's 25 to a mile, and they have the 25 in a mile, more than that. But the other thing is, they're also willing to pay overages that they need to. They said they have, I'm going to tell you the exact words that they told me. Money is not an object.
Well, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to have folks look at it.
Okay, but John Leone's already been out there and said no.
But John has said he will look into this. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I don't know that we need to spend an inordinate amount of time
No,
on this.
I will-
John has said he will look into it.
I will send you an email that gives you names and contact.
I meant to ask you for the information before I got here, but I got distracted and never asked in response to your email. When you said you had something in Lee, I meant to ask you, well, what is it?
Well, I figured I was going to see you.
Yeah, I would really encourage all reps, because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in one of our internal negotiating sessions. If a group of people has a trouble, or one person has trouble, and they bring it to the rep, get it to John. You know,
It
don't.
just came in this week.
Linda, we talked about this at our last session last week, and I encouraged you to call John with these, or have these people call John, because we have no representative for Lee. I just want to say that part of what I think our job says, when we get a complaint that has a basis to it, we shoot it to John and we don't sit on it. Just shoot it to John. John has been very successful about solving issues here in Sheffield. And I've praised you more than once.
Thank you. I agree.
So, as I said, as I was saying, I needed to have more information for you before I sent it to you. So
Okay, that's great.
consider it official from here, and I will follow through with all the stuff. Okay?
Sounds good.
The town of Lee does not have any reps here.
It's all right.
So you can work through me, or Dennis has taken some interest in this. He actually went out and took a look at the situation there. And so I will probably try and put you in touch with the town, I don't know if it's a town
Chris
administrator.
Britton. Chris
or-
Britton.
Yeah, but, well.
It's
the
Chris
town-
Britton.
I know who it is, thank you. I don't know his title, if it's town administrator or town manager, but whatever it is, he's the top guy,
Okay,
okay?
sounds good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thanks, John.
thanks, John.
Nice job.
That's new business. Any other business? Okay. We were supposed to have an election in March. Obviously, we didn't have an election in March. We didn't have it in June either. A quarter of the two-year term is over already. But we have to elect a chairman.
Do you want it again? Does
I
anybody
want
it? Does anybody want it?
Can I be excused?
Yes.
I can't vote.
Do you want to be chairman?
Have a good trip home.
Thank you.
Linda, I'd like to nominate you.
I second it.
Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to call it unanimous. And,
Congratulations.
no, yeah, thanks.
She drew the short straw again.
I had said that I would stay as chairman as long as it took us to get the contract for the, with Spectrum, the license agreement contract. And we didn't expect it to take quite this long. So,
Actually, I think it's going pretty well, to be honest.
I think it's taken much longer than it did last time, Renee. I'm sorry.
Well, I came on after Paul O'Brien had been on for some time. And
Yes.
I was there
You
for.
were only there half the
I
time.
think I was there for three quarters
When
of the
does the
year,
current
but whatever.
contract expire?
Pardon me?
When does the current contract
It
expire?
has expired.
February 28th, 20.
Okay, that's where I got confused. I was, yeah.
Yes, it's expired.
It's gone.
We are now working with an expired contract. The state is aware of this situation. We have made them aware, and they say, okay, but please get it as quickly as you can, and we're really trying to do that.
Now, are they bound by the conditions of the
Yes.
existing
The-
contract,
yes,
even though it
Yes,
had
it
expired?
continues until the new contract
And
is
just so you
ratified.
know, the new contract is quite similar.
Yeah.
There are adjustments, significant adjustments, but it is, in terms of function, a lot, it won't change our functioning
Right.
for the time being. Okay.
And there's enough flexibility in it that it could last for 10 years?
We hope so.
Even if the cable keeps...
Well, this
disappearing?
this contract that just retired is 10 years old. And there are certain things in it that will become obsolete, as did in that contract, and other new things in it, so.
I mean, I think every contract that's been written since the beginning,
all right.
it makes it subject to federal
We will,
laws and changes accordingly.
We will be hopefully wrapping it up before our next meeting and be able to have the finished product at the next meeting.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the next meeting. The next meeting is December 12th, 6:30 p.m. in Lenox.
If I could go back, I think it's really important to recognize on the new contract that, first of all, there was a huge ascertainment study done. This committee took every step that's required by the state, which many committees do not. Particularly Dennis spent an inordinate amount of time and still continues to spend an inordinate amount of time reviewing cable contracts across the state of Massachusetts from all of the providers. At the same time, we, taking some of that input, basically wrote a brand-new contract that is much stronger. I have to just echo what Linda said. It is much stronger. It has a number of issues that were not even thought of in the Time Warner cable, because Spectrum is a completely different provider than Time Warner was. And so this is a much stronger contract, and personally, I think we're down to some final language issues and one big issue, and hopefully, I don't know if we'll have it resolved personally by December, but personally, I think the negotiations have been going as well as I had hoped. But it's a completely different contract. It's a much stronger contract. And it will be the town select boards that in the final analysis approve the contract. Each of the 5 towns will have to approve the contract. So
I come from a place of ignorance since I've been out of touch for so long. Is it still the case that any and all PEG funding is a pass-through to subscribers? In other words, nothing
Yes.
actually comes from the cable
Yes.
entity itself?
Yes.
It's just a pass-through
Yes.
mechanism?
they collect everything
So they
that
collect and then
give.
just pass it through?
They collect
so,
the 5%, and
Right.
on the paid capital, they collect it
Right. I
from the
yeah,
subscribers.
I think something had to have changed because your budget is significantly more than it used to be. I mean, I'm going back quite a few years, but I'm just saying you're talking $500,000 a year, right?
It's gone as high as 520 and as low as 420. It
Okay.
hovers around 470.
It's a function of how much revenue
Yeah,
Charter
because
gets. So as they raise their rates, they get 5% of that
It's a percentage of
increasing
revenue.
rate.
All right, so
But if
none
they have
of
fewer
that
customers-
involves their internet?
Yeah.
Or it does?
No.
No, and it never will.
No.
Nope.
No, that didn't change, okay, all right, yeah, it didn't way
They're
back.
capped by law under
Yes.
5%.
No, I know that, yeah, that part I remember, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if there's any other business, we'll take care of it. But we hope that we will have it just finished by the next meeting, certainly, signed and sealed before the end of the year.
Okay.
Which means, so if it isn't done by the December 12th, we've got maybe 5 days before everybody disappears for Christmas.
I'm just a little bit disappointed in the fact that, not in the work that this committee has done, but in the fact that there is no revenue realized from internet service, because originally, we had tried to get internet revenue, as included as part of budget, as part of, the formula. And they said, well, we don't provide TV programming over the internet. That has changed.
Yes,
That has changed. So that changed, but yet they still get away with not.
It's the FCC is very far behind.
I just thought, just based on the language,
That
as
House
I remember it, was
Representative
the TV programming
still
aspect of
controlled.
it. Yeah.
The cable industry.
Yeah.
With that, I will agree 100%, because the FCC is living in the 1960s.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, yeah.
Well, it's more than just that. The 1984 Cable Act was legislation that was passed by the House and the Senate. The FCC is just the agency that oversees it.
Right.
And creates the law to match that. And for whatever reason, broadband is not licensed because it wasn't even thought of back in 1984. And legislators haven't come up with a similar law for broadband.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is because to encourage new technology. It's brought Amazon Prime and Hulu and Netflix, and people recognize that the value of not having to watch commercials. That has value,
Yeah.
but the downside is that it doesn't fund communities.
That is correct. And it is because it's not television per se. because it's called streaming, it's not television per se, it is not regulated by the FCC the way TV per se.
In a way it is, and I'm sure there's language in there that prevents it from happening, but I get all my programming through streaming, through Spectrum. However, my bill reflects, a certain percentage for them, but I don't have a cable box. It's all done through streaming.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying.
I was kind of hoping that there would be somehow, some way to,
Nothing's going to happen until the
No.
FCC or
Yeah.
the state
Yeah.
takes action.
CTSP
And it
doesn't
will
see
be
a
fascinating.
dime of your percentage of the revenue they receive from you.
That's correct.
If all you're doing is getting streaming TV from Spectrum.
Which is
Yeah.
why they need to pass.
my cable bill doesn't change. My cable bill is the same whether I have a cable box or whether I have streaming.
Okay, do I have?
That doesn't matter.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn, is that what you're looking
Yes,
for?
because it's getting late, and I'm getting hungry.
So moved.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the one motion that carries.
Everybody agrees on it.
Unanimous.
Yes.